Since the Sandbox fans, as we approach draft season, we're here to give you guys our top prospects. Not the guys that are going to go, the first 5 picks. Like, that's pretty unanimous. We have an idea who that is, but we're going to kind of evaluate a little bit more of what that draft class was like, maybe some potential destinations, and just comparing them, to other positions. And I have some questions here, too, that, I want your opinion on to help me really figure out how we're feeling with where these guys are going to go. One, we know that, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Odunze, and Malik Nabers, these are guys that are all going to be talked about within, the top 5, top 10 picks at the very minimum. We have some offensive linemen that we're going to talk about today that I know will go inside the top 10 because it's a premium position in the NFL. I feel like this isn't a crazy, flashy cornerback or pass rusher class that we've seen, but later on in rounds 2 or 3, there's a lot of depth at that position. So that's why I feel like it's so important to really evaluate and understand what you have the opportunity to select, because building your team for the future is crucial, but you want to make sure that you're getting guys that didn't just have highlight plays in college, but are great people that are going to help your organization, really grow. With the guys that we just talked about, amongst the top names, the first question that comes to mind for me is really just trying to see or gauge where everyone is at with the Nabers Odunze type of conversation, because I feel like out of the top names, this is one of the bigger conversations, because I think it's pretty clear Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the first wide receiver selected. Not saying he's going to be the first player selected. It's pretty clear that Caleb Williams is going to be the first quarterback selected. But out of those guys that are up next, how do you really compare them? Do you think they're comparable players? How do you view their skill sets? And, do you have some fits inside that top 10?
They're really good in different ways. Where I look at Malik Nabers, his footwork and his route running is absolutely elite. The body control that he has, just being able to make the catch is great. And Odunze has sick hands. He's got all the talent. I think Malik Nabers is a stud, and he's going to progress into a stud throughout the league. I think Odunze is going to have, outside of Marvin Harrison, the most immediate impact on a team.
I agree.
Because the spot that I have him going, I kind of think he's a perfect fit there in Arizona at the 4 spot. I think that's where he's going to go. But I would be remiss to say that I don't see the Chargers going with Malik. I could see the Chargers going with Malik Nabers at 5, especially with offloading Keenan Allen, which, I think the Bears cleaned house on that trade.
Yeah, they did.
I get that the Chargers are kind of restarting everything. They got Harbaugh coming in, but dude, you got a 4th for Keenan Allen, and now the Bears are looking at a team with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. You got Cole Kmet. Oh. I think you stick with Justin Fields at this point. He's got the weapons. Give him the shot now.
Yeah, I feel like it's really difficult to not let Fields kind of be in that scenario, because then it's just all right, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, who's a good check down running back too, as long as he's on the field. And we've seen Kmet catch 700 yards consistently. I feel like for an established pro that's a better core rather than, a rookie guy, because I feel like if you're going to go in that rookie direction, you want to give him a young wide receiver to really grow with and get those reps with. I think those are all really good points. My honest opinion, I think after seeing those moves, I think the Chargers are going to try and move back. I feel like they're going to have too many positions to address, and they're going to need a stockpile of picks. I don't think a drastic amount. I think they still pick within the top 15, but a team like the Raiders, a team like the Vikings that are interested in actually trading up for a quarterback. You could see Odunze or a Nabers still be available at the 10 position, depending on how some of the domino effects really fall. I also agree that Odunze I would take over Nabers. I think he has the ability to catch, the 7 to 10 passes that you're really looking for out of a number 1 wide receiver. I don't think that this is a fair comparison, but I think his play style emulates this guy the best, but I just know that the molds and the body size doesn't really equate to this comparison. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, I feel like, is a good comparison for Odunze. I think that there's going to be a team inside that first round that he can really go and, like you said, make that immediate impact. I think Arizona is another interesting scenario. Just like you said, they can select a receiver at 4, but they could also move back to a 7 or a 9. And, well, not 9, because I think the Bears are If
They're
they
staying
move,
at
yeah,
9. Like,
yeah.
I think they're going to move out of 1, though.
Yes.
I think it's smart at this point. Like, unless you know you've decided you're taking Caleb Williams and you're going to get a ton of compensation for Fields, move. You gotta move, dude.
Yeah.
Because you're going to stockpile picks there. What are you going to get at the 1? Like, you could get Marvin Harrison, but now you have 3 stud receivers. It's like there's too many mouths to feed on that offense almost.
Yeah.
But I get having him work under Keenan Allen could be really, really big. I don't know that Marvin Harrison necessarily needs to work underneath somebody at this point, though.
An extremely unlikely scenario, too, but just for the sake of conversation, right? The Vikings have now 2 first-round picks, and we just did a video on YouTube, so go and check that out. They could move those 2 first-round picks in a second for next year with a 4th-round pick for this year for that number 1 overall pick. And then you're talking about the Bears picking at 9, 11, and 23 for additional picks for next year. 3 first-round picks this year, and the Vikings still get their guy. It's not likely because it's an in-division trade. Mm-hmm. But I'm just trying to gauge all the different routes that the Bears can go, that the Vikings can go, and some of these teams. I do think Odunze will be selected before Nabers, but those 2 teams are definitely locations that they can go. I think that there's a couple other interesting scenarios, like the Saints. I think they could really select a wide receiver. I feel like they've been so defensive heavy for some time. They obviously have Kamara, they have Olave, but the whole Michael Thomas scenario isn't working out. They need help trying to gauge that offense and grow it with somebody besides fucking Taysom Hill. Like, let's be real here. But I also feel like they can go on the defensive side of the ball. Before we start breaking down our top prospects, I feel like my last question has to come to that quarterback position. Where do you see the conversation with May and Daniels? I've heard so much about the Vikings and the Commanders really loving, Drake May. I've heard the Pats and the Raiders absolutely loving Jaden Daniels. I feel like it's a coin flip at this point, but where do you stand between the 2? I personally feel like that Jaden Daniels is the guy. I think he might be the best quarterback in this entire draft class.
I agree with that. I think he's going to be a stud, unless I think Caleb Williams has the most talent.
Yes.
But I think he needs the right position to do well, just because, and I don't want to bring it back to attitude, but I feel like he could check himself out of the game if things aren't going well, where I feel like Jaden Daniels is just going to keep putting his head down and going. Like, I think he has incredible skill, and he's the best dual threat. Overall talent, I think it's Caleb Williams. But I think Caleb Williams almost needs the better scenario than Jaden Daniels does.
I absolutely agree with that, and I feel like Jaden Daniels might take a little bit more time to be like that type of a superstar, depending on the scenario he ends up in. But I think those are all really interesting points. But when I made my thoughts last year on who I thought the best quarterback in the draft was, in any year, honestly, I based that off of skill set and how that meets the NFL today. Mm-hmm. And Caleb Williams has a very strong skill set and a big arm, but I like Jaden Daniels' skill set a little bit better. And for a guy that is looked at as a little bit more mobile, he has a huge arm. Like, he can really throw the deep ball, and we've seen that. They have 2 wide receivers that could be selected in the first round.
He's how I feel like people were with Richardson, but I feel like people liked Jaden Daniels more than they liked Richardson last year, whereas really mobile quarterback, gunslinger of an arm. And now people were kind of doubting Anthony Richardson. He was very 50-50. Last year you were like, he's going to be a stud, or you're like, I don't know how I feel about this guy.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Jaden Daniels, more people are a little more optimistic about how it's going to go. I don't know if that's because of the Heisman. I don't know if it's because he played 4 years in college and he's just consistently gotten better every year. I'm really excited to see what he does. You asked the question about Drake May. I flip-flop back and forth. The point that I'm at right now, I kind of like it. I kind of think I think he's going to be solid. The one thing that I want to see change is the turnovers. I think that's his biggest issue, is turning the ball over. He has a gunslinger of an arm. He can fit it into tight spots. Again, he's not the most mobile quarterback, but I still think he's good. If he limits those turnovers, we can see him do really, really well. He's a guy that, if he goes to Washington, I do think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to develop, but he has a good receiver core that can get separation. Let's just work on limiting the turnovers, which I think is something that a good coach can really help a young quarterback with. And
something that doesn't usually happen for these young quarterbacks, especially to the teams that they get drafted to. I think May would be so much better in his career and better off if he sat a year or two.
Agree.
That Jordan Love type of effect. You get to process. You get to make that mental development. And there's no pressure, right? Like, obviously, it was a weird time in Green Bay for a little bit when you drafted Love, still had Rodgers trying to compete, and you're not giving him, those pieces around him. But realistically, look at how that transition happened. Extremely successful, and Mahomes got that time to sit for a little bit. And you see other scenarios like C.J. Stroud where he got played in year one, and it was extremely successful. Yep. But I feel like that depends on the core you're around. If he's going to a Washington or a Minnesota, I don't think the best scenario is to, hey, we drafted you here. We gave up all this capital. Go and show us why you're worth it. I don't think that's the right approach. I think Kevin O'Connell could develop a quarterback extremely well, too. I just hope that they don't put that pressure on him, knowing how much better the NFC North really got, too.
Who are they going to sit behind, though? If you go to Washington, who are you sitting behind? If you go to Minnesota, who are you sitting behind? Because it's not Kirk, it's not Howell, it's not all these guys that they just got rid of.
No, it's
he sits behind Brissett for a year. I like that could work, but I don't know that.
New England.
That's what I'm saying. If he ends up falling to 3 to New England, you could consider that if you wanted to sit a year back. But if I'm being honest, if New England sees Jaden Daniels and Drake May on the board, they're gonna go Jaden Daniels.
I think they would take Marvin Harrison over Drake May if Jaden Daniels was gone at that point.
I agree.
To be honest,
I agree.
I think Sam Darnold could start the year. I don't think that would be a best case scenario for Minnesota, and you're not really telling your franchise, Justin Jefferson, and your 1-year running back in Aaron Jones, hey, we're in it to win it this year. I do still feel like there's a lot of quarterback options out there that could be signed that have a little bit more of that veteran presence. It really is going to be extremely interesting. I think Drake May has a big arm, but it just rubs me the wrong way with the whole UNC thing. It really does. Like, and I can't say that, because he played for USC, because he played for UNC, that they're not going to be a good quarterback, because that's just not enough information to make a justifiable case. But we've seen time and time again these players that are supposed to be big name and they don't come from one of those top conferences, how it's a lot tougher to make that transition. But Twan, we really broke down a lot of those top guys. I wanted to just share a couple of the guys that I feel like a little bit more of my favorite type of prospects. One of my favorite defenders in this draft, I'm going to start off here first. I got Jared Verse. I feel like he's the best pass rusher in the draft coming out of FSU. Started his career at Bama, had 2 seasons over at FSU. He had 18 sacks during those 2 seasons. Has a pretty solid build, 6'4", 250, 260. You do see guys like Myles Garrett be like a little bit bigger, a little bit taller in stature. But the last 2 games of this collegiate season, he finished the year strong, 4.5 sacks. He ran a 4.5 40, so I feel like those are all really good things to have as part of your portfolio coming to the NFL. I think this is a top 15 selection. I have some names here. Do you think that, Verse is a guy that's going to go within, that pick, the top 15 picks?
I think so. I think there's a need for edge rushers still. Now, there are a lot of premier edge rushers, but I think what you're starting to see now is with how much depth and how much talent there is in the NFL, you're starting to see teams stack up with 2 elite pass rushers.
Yes.
We're seeing it right now in Vegas with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins.
Yes.
We saw it last year
Tyree
with Bosa.
Wilson, too.
Tyree Wilson, right. We saw it last year with Bosa and Chase Young. Like, when you have those 2 pass rushers, it's really, really helpful. I can see him going to a team with another good pass rusher in the top 15. Or you could see him, if the Chargers do trade back and they need to fill things, he goes to Chargers trade back to 12, 13. He gets drafted there. And you say, see ya, Bosa, and you have him kind of work under Khalil Mack. I think you can have things like that work well.
Or learn from them both and just be able to get that year, not put him in that starting role, third down specialist, rushing after the passer, utilizing his skill set, playing a Mack and a Bosa. Now that they have realistic deals and the restructured contracts, I feel like that's beneficial to the salary cap, but getting that knowledge, I feel like, would be so beneficial, and they do need a star passer that could stay on the field. I have a couple of other teams here. I feel like there's a couple of fits for Indy I really like, but this is one of them that I really like. I feel like you put him next to DeForest Buckner. They just signed Zaire Franklin. I know that they just brought back Kenny Moore on the defensive side of the ball, too. The Colts are an underrated team in the AFC. I know everyone's thinking Texans, Jags. Watch out for the Colts. And
Dynamite.
If they get a guy like Verse that can really improve that defense, I think that's a great destination. 2 other teams, New Orleans and Chicago. I think Chicago, more importantly, if you're getting multiple first-round picks, address the defensive side of the ball. There's been so much noise on the offensive side. Put him next to Sweat. You have great defenders in the secondary there. You just brought in 2 great linebackers last offseason. This will really even out what the Chicago Bears are trying to build. And I feel like improving the defensive side is only going to help the offense either get more opportunities on the field or stay off the field depending on where they're at in sort of games. And New Orleans, I just feel like they need so many young players. Like, it's nice that they get some rework deals with Derek Carr and Tyrann Mathieu, but $60 million over the cap and your average freaking age as part of your roster is like 28, 29 years old. When you're seeing teams like the Texans, teams like the Packers, teams like the Giants at like 24 and a half, that's a big difference.
And especially knowing that the Saints are who they are, they're just not as talented. They're not going to make it to the Super Bowl. Like, let's be real. They're not making it to the Super Bowl. It would be a shock if they were to make it to an NFC Championship game. I think a divisional
playoffs.
Game. Like, it is a shock if they make it to the playoffs. Like, it really is. Steve, you mentioned Indy. I want to talk about a guy that I think would be an unbelievably good fit in Indy. I don't know if he'll make it as far down. Where's Indy picking? 18, 19?
A little bit before that.
A little bit
15,
before this.
16.
So maybe Cooper DeJean. I think he is quite possibly the most versatile defensive back in the draft. He can play safety. He can play corner. He can play slot corner too. Like, he is incredibly versatile.
Is that your favorite corner of the draft?
He's my favorite defensive back because I think teams are going to be able to move him around more than just corner.
Okay.
I think you're going to be able to throw him to safety when you need him to play safety, things like that. If you need him to cover, he can cover. Out of Iowa, we know how good that Iowa defense has been over the past couple years. We saw Van Ness get drafted, who hasn't translated as well to the NFL. That's a different position. Jack Campbell, I think, has played well in the NFL so far, and I think he's only going to improve. When you look at that secondary, Cooper DeJean is the guy in Iowa that really, really stands out. I think he is my favorite defensive back in the draft. There are a couple of other corners that we're going to talk about later, I think, but Cooper DeJean, I think, is a good fit in somewhere like Indy. I think he could be a really good fit in Atlanta because if you have Jesse Bates, you have A.J. Terrell, and then you have Cooper DeJean, that secondary is very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
I do think Atlanta's going to try and dress the offensive side of the ball, but I would love to see Cooper DeJean there.
Because I thought Verse would be a great spot for there, but I honestly just feel like with the way that they're going, like with that direction, and not that they need it on the offensive side, but it's like you might as well fully solidify that side of the ball. And like I thought bringing in Rondale Moore was great. I thought the Mooney move was really questionable because honestly I feel like Moore can give you the production of Mooney for millions of dollars less. Like, let's be real here. You've got Pitts. Bijan's a top pick. Drake London's a top pick. You invest the money in Kirk Cousins, and you do have a solid offensive line. Wouldn't surprise me if they try and add some depth there. Brock Bowers could be a name if they want to make 2 tight ends. But Brock Bowers is the next guy on my list that I really did want to talk about here. 3 seasons at Georgia, 26 touchdowns is a big number. A 2-time John Mackey Award winner. This is a guy that if there weren't so many great wide receivers as part of this class would probably likely go in the top 10. And there's still that chance that he could. 175 receptions over 3 seasons with 2,500 yards. Those are fantastic numbers for a tight end in college. Iowa's usually the school that's putting all the good tight ends into the NFL. But for Bowers, I feel like Atlanta could be a good spot to really make that a diverse offense. Don't want to keep beating the Indy bush, but they could go defense with Verse. But if they went offense with Bowers, I do feel like that would be a great fit. Lou doesn't want that to be the direction, but I do feel like if he's seen that skill set translate, Pittman got a little bit more open because they had a tight end that was moving the way they did, and Jonathan Taylor had an extra blocker to find his holes and scamper across the yard. I feel like that would be a good destination. If he was to fall a little bit more, though, Seattle, I feel like Seattle would be a really good spot. You know, with the wide receiver core they had, we talked about them potentially moving on from one of those wide receivers to balance out a little bit, but I feel like Seattle has put so much attention on the defensive side of the ball. Draymond Jones last offseason with a couple of young draft picks. You just give Leonard Williams $20 million a year at this point in his career, and you know, kudos to them for really taking care of business. They got their elite secondary at the safety and cornerback position, so I feel like being able to get Bowers to work the middle of the field instead of a fucking Will Dissly or a Noah Fant, like I feel like you're talking about a drastic improvement. And this is just an if scenario. If Vegas didn't go the quarterback direction, dude, Bowers in there would be sick.
Bowers would be sick. The one part I'm hesitant about is the fact that they have Mayer, but Mayer hasn't really showed us much. I'd like to see what he does with an offseason with Antonio Pierce versus McDaniels. But again, they're a team that you really could play a 2 tight end set with. Another one that I'm going to use, it's cliche. A lot of people have talked about it. If he manages to fall to 17, Cincy's got to take him.
Okay.
I think Cincy, they signed Gesicki, but Gesicki doesn't play the type of tight end role that Bowers plays. Bowers is going to block for you too. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things about why I think Brock Bowers is the best tight end prospect that we have seen in recent years. Absolutely. Because who else are we thinking about? We're thinking about Pitts.
Hawkinson,
but Bowers beats them, I think. I think Bowers is going to be better than them. I think that overall... I think
it's close, dude. I know Hawkinson is going to get selected a little bit. He got selected later than where Bowers will. But I do feel like the way Hawkinson's skill set translated, he has to be recognized as one of those tops.
He is, but I just think Bowers brings that other part to the game. Like, my comp for Bowers is Kittle. My comp for Bowers is Kittle because he's great at catching the ball. He's a strong physical dude, hard to bring down, but he can pick up blocks from top-tier edge rushers.
Do you think he's as explosive as Kittle? I feel like that's the one thing that I wouldn't say.
I don't know about explosive, but I like the way he blocks. He blocks as well as Kittle. He's really, really good. I'm very excited to see where he goes. I think he's a guy that could make an immediate impact on a team as well. I don't think he's somebody that's going to, sit behind another tight end. I think you put him in immediately and he goes to work.
I think having the Laporta expectations would be lofty expectations just because Laporta's first season was unlike any other tight end in NFL history. But if he was to even get like a third of that, dude, like you're talking about like a crazy skill set. With Tennessee's recent moves, I know that there's still questions at the quarterback position, but for where they're selecting, do you feel like that's too early for a guy like Bowers? I think fit in with Ridley and D-Hop?
I think it's early. I think Tennessee needs a lot of help on defense, and that's where my hesitancy is for Bowers. Is he a great fit? I think absolutely. I think you give a good safety net because Ridley's going down the field. D-Hop's going down the field. You need someone to kind of help out closer to the quarterback. You got Bowers there, especially if it's going to be Levis, a younger guy. But they've addressed the offense so much in the offseason that I think they're going to go defense in this draft. And a guy that could fit there that early, Cooper DeJean that we just talked about. We can also talk about, and I think McKinstry, that would be too early.
Maybe a Dallas Turner next to Jeffrey Simmons,
Dallas Turner's the name I have here. He would be really, really good. Too early to go with a D tackle like Mason Smith from LSU, I think. But there are some things that they can do on the defensive side of the ball. I really would like them to focus on secondary specifically because I think they have the most exposable secondary in the NFL. Maybe outside of the Eagles before they got C.J. Gardner-Johnson back. But they could also go O-line. Speaking of the O-line, there is a name that I want to bring up. Penn State guy. I don't think he's going to be the best O-lineman in the draft. I'll say that.
Okay.
I do think that Joe Alt from Notre Dame will be, but Olu Fashwan is the real deal. I've had the pleasure of watching him twice. He's unbelievable. He is a brick wall. Nobody gets by the guy. I think he is going to be the second best tackle in the draft, second best offensive lineman in the draft.
Do you?
I do. I think he's an absolute brick wall. He plays against elite pass rushers when he goes against Ohio State and Michigan. Now, I know they struggled in those games a lot.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that you can, if you have a good running back behind you, he's going to push the defensive line back. He is an absolute stud, and he's going to protect the quarterback through and through. It just so happens that Drew Aller is a shit quarterback.
Yeah. No, I feel that. I do have an offensive line I want to cater to that conversation, but since I brought up Dallas Turner, I feel like that could be a direction. I think as far as, like, the defensive line goes, like, do you think that's a guy that's going to go within, like, the top 12? Like, do you feel like he's
12?
Yeah. I feel like we see every single year, like, the interior defensive linemen get a lot more love than people would really expect. And I feel like there's going to be guys that go there. And I feel like he's the biggest name besides, like, a Verse is a little bit more of, like, that edge type of a player. But Dallas Turner is no doubt, like, one of, like, those middle guys. Ran a 4.40, 250 pounds, 6'3". He had 10 sacks this past season. I bring up Tennessee because I just feel like if you have to get after the passer, having him next to Jeffrey Simmons picking on interior offensive linemen, that would be a severe problem to have. But an even better fit, and I feel like this would be a perfect scenario for this team to kind of completely disregard not signing this dude, Miami. If Dallas Turner went to Miami to replace Christian Wilkins, I feel like that would be a great destination. Talk about an immediate role. You get the warm weather, the state tax. You don't got to worry about any of that. You're playing for a team that is viewed as a contender at this point, and you're talking about a player that's pro-ready. So I feel like Dallas Turner is going to be in that top 15 selection. I do feel like there's a couple other teams that you could really talk about here with this dude, but I feel like Tennessee and Miami make a lot of sense for him.
Yep. Tell me he wouldn't be a great fit there in Green Bay as well.
He would, and that was a team I was thinking too. I just don't think he falls that far.
I don't think so either, but a guy that might on the defensive end is Braylon Trace from Washington, dude.
Okay.
Unbelievable edge rusher. He was the shining piece in Washington's defense. I know Washington was known for just putting points up on people, and on the other end letting up kind of a lot of points, but their shining star on defense was Braylon Trace. He was an edge rusher. Dude, he was absolutely incredible. You watch him throughout the entire college season. This is a guy you got to watch out for, and I don't know that he's going to go in the top 15, but I think you look at 15 to 25, that's a sweet spot. I think Green Bay is a good location for him. You know, I think you can look and see maybe, and if he falls down to Detroit, I think Detroit would be stupid not to take something like that. Pair him up with Aiden Hutchinson, do something like that. Pittsburgh would be very, very dangerous in Pittsburgh. You got Hayward, you got TJ Watt, you got all these guys, and then you add Braylon Trace. I mean, I think that could be very, very dangerous. I do want to see Pittsburgh, I think, go to O-line again and really solidify that O-line. I know Ant doesn't want to see it, but Pittsburgh can go O-line and still not be better than the Ravens. So
the Steelers have made a lot of defensive moves this offseason too, and I honestly feel like it's impressive because if you build that defense and you address that offensive line in the draft once again, there's no excuses for Russell Wilson. And not that there was in Denver, because he got paid the bag. He was moved as a star quarterback, but I just feel like they'll probably continue to address the wide receiver position, especially after moving Deontay Johnson. I think they're going to try and run the ball now that Arthur Smith is in there. So I definitely think that offensive line's the direction that they're going to go in. There's so many other destinations, you know, for a lot of these teams. But you bring up Washington. I'm going to talk about the guy who I think is the second best offensive lineman in this draft, I'm going to botch this. Troy Fautanu. I definitely botched it.
It's good enough.
Yeah. but I just feel like this team has addressed the offensive line position in prior drafts. They addressed the offensive line position this offseason with the trade with the Ravens for Morgan Moses. The New York Jets can't go another year saying, oh, shit, our offensive line is why our offense sucks. And I feel like you have to fault them for some part of Zach Wilson's development. Like, there were games that I want to say, like, hey, like, he didn't even have a chance. Like, he really didn't. And I'm not trying to give him any justification because he also sucked.
Right. But no, but you're exactly right. Like, you can't look at the Patriots saying they fumbled the bag with Mac Jones and then look at the Jets and say, it's just Zach Wilson's fault.
Yes.
You can't do that.
And I would say, like the Patriots are another team. Like, I know that they're going to go quarterback or wide receiver, but if they were to ever move out, like, I could see them getting an offensive line. But Washington just had such a prolific year this past season. I know they didn't finish the way that they wanted to, but Troy had an 87 athleticism score that was first for offensive linemen in the entire draft class. He has quick hands. He has the versatility to start on the right side as far as the tackle. He can go inside and give you that guard. He's strong. He's fast. I feel like the Jets are set up for success. You got Garrett Wilson. You got Breece Hall. I know that they're going to go and get, one of Aaron Rodgers' friends. Again, maybe they bring in Bakhtiari and they don't need to go this direction and they can help bring in, offensive talent pieces to really put up points. But the Jets are losing time. The Aaron Rodgers window is closing. Like, I just don't see him playing until 46 years old like Brady. I really don't. So I know it's the goddamn Jets. But at the same time, like, this move would make, like, too much sense. And I feel like to just add another pass rusher to the Jets, I don't want to say it would be pointless, but I just don't think that's addressing the things that they would need to properly in the offseason.
And there's depth there. You can get it later when you're in the first round if you're the New York Jets. Please don't listen to me because I don't want them to do well. Yeah. But if they get another O-lineman that just – Rodgers had that Achilles tear – that makes him more fragile now. You need to keep him upright. And the only way you're going to do that is to make sure that you have a solid O-line. You got robbed by the Steelers last year when they took Broderick Jones. Don't let that happen again here. If you need to trade up to get a better guy, do it. Make sure you lock in an offensive lineman. staying on the offensive line, I'm going to talk about a later round draft pick, somebody that I'd like the New England Patriots to go after in round 3 or 4. Zach Zinter out of Michigan.
Oh, wow.
North Andover kid, so he's local from here. Michigan O-line was very, very good this year. There are some O-linemen in this draft. I think Zach Zinter is one of the better guys from the Michigan offensive line in the draft. You can see with the run game, and you know how the Patriots like to play. They like to run the football a lot and then go to the pass. I don't know if that's going to change this year with Gerard Mayo. But if we get a mobile quarterback, you're going to want a guy that you can keep upright. And Jaden Daniels. Like, if you have Jaden Daniels, you want to keep him upright. But if he's going to run the ball, you want your offensive lineman to be able to push that defensive line back. Zach Zinter did that really, really well in Michigan when you saw that with Blake Corum having those absolutely incredible games year in and year out with Michigan. So Zach Zinter is a guy I'd like to see in round 3 or 4 of the Patriots try and attack.
You bring up Corum, and it just kind of helps me bring the conversation back to Joe Alt a little bit. I do feel like this is one of the first names that we're going to hear gone off the board for the offensive line position. I feel like a good fit for someone like him in a team that just needs to kind of like start getting leveled out a little bit. I think the Broncos could be a good fit for Joe Alt, picking where they do. I also feel like they're in a likely scenario to move back. But there were a couple things that I wanted to talk about here and just kind of have as more of like a conversation. When you bring up Corum, it just helps me like kind of get your thoughts on this. But Joe Alt had less bench reps than Corum. Like, does that concern you for like an offensive lineman who is viewed as going first? Like, I know that just sitting there and like going as long as you can isn't really a measure of like football success. But like, this dude's a running back and he's able to push that weight. This dude's supposed to push around 340-pound dudes. Does that make you feel like he's going to have a less successful transition because of that?
Not necessarily, because, I mean, Blake Corum is a strong, tough, hard-running dude. He's shorter dude. He's got shorter arms. The bench press, that's what's going to get you the most reps, is having those shorter arms.
For sure.
We saw things like that with Skoronski. That's why he got moved to guard. He's strong, but his wingspan wasn't enough. Joe Alt's got a bigger wingspan. He's 6'8".
Yeah.
I'm not overly concerned. I do want to see him on a team with a taller quarterback, though, because if you put him in Arizona, I think Kyler's going to struggle with a guy that tall.
Yeah, I do. I do feel that. And he's a 3-year starter. I honestly view him as a day one left tackle. Mm-hmm. Arizona would be an interesting spot because I just feel like they have holes like all over the place. But maybe that's like one of like those move back scenarios. If they move from 4 and then you stay inside the top 10, could be a guy. But
you got Paris Johnson last year too. So if you go Alton Johnson, that's a really good solidification of your tackle position.
Yeah.
And I don't want to keep saying Kyler short, but it is a little bit of a struggle when you're looking at a 5'10", maybe 5'8", if the NFL isn't just actually making accurate heights.
Yeah.
Versus a 6'8" tackle. It's going to be a little bit trickier.
For sure. He probably struggles as it is without trying to like figure out the whole offensive line thing. Twan, I know that we talked about the cornerback position a little bit. You bring up Iowa. I think we have 2 great cornerbacks from Bama coming in.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah. So Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold, I feel like these are 2 guys that are definitely going to go in the first round. I honestly feel they do. I know that there's some flags with McKinstry because he got the Jones fracture in the foot, but I feel like along with the name that you shared, this is a premier position in the NFL. Yeah. And there's an extreme need now that there's 3 to 4 wide receivers on the field at a time. I want to know how you view these 2 guys as either – different? Is one light years ahead of the other? Do you feel like they're very comparable? Maybe some fits.
They're close, but I like Terrion Arnold more because he tackles.
Okay. He
can tackle. He doesn't shy away from it. He'll go up there and he'll hit somebody.
Yes.
He's a cover corner, but he's also a tackler, and I think that's a very, very valuable thing. Some fits that I could see if LA Chargers move back, or if he manages to fall all the way back to like the Rams. I'd love to see the Rams take him.
Have the Rams down here. Yeah.
Rams would be an awesome team to take him. You could look at the Bengals there at 17.
Jags.
The Jags really would need somebody like that, and I was thinking Houston, but they don't have that pick at this point.
No.
So I mean,
but
if Kool-Aid falls to 2, though, if Kool-Aid falls to the second round, which I think he's more likely to fall to the second round than Terrion, but if he does,
Dude, they pick at 42. That's only 8 picks into the.
That's what I'm saying. Like they could really get that if you have him and you have Stingley. And then you have Jalen Petrie at the safety position. That works out really, really well. And then you start attacking the D line a little bit later.
Dallas Turner could go there too, though, at 42.
Imagine. I do. I think Dallas Turner's going first round. Yeah, I think he's such a big name that a team's going to be like, he's here. And even if it gets to the 20, and some teams like, dude, like
why?
Well, let's just get the best player in the draft here, Dallas Turner.
Yes. I agree. I definitely agree. So I have one more name that I wanted to talk about, but I also have some questions. So I'm going to bring up the questions before I get into a name. Let's bring this to the quarterback position once again. Mm-hmm. Obviously, a great season out of Michigan, winning it all this year. And I feel like since then, we've heard J.J. McCarthy's name come up in conversation so much more, honestly. Do you feel like a lot of the J.J. McCarthy first-round conversation has really came from, being a national champion? Do you feel like he's worthy of that? Where do you see him fitting in here with the rest of the quarterbacks? Is it Williams, Daniels, May, and then McCarthy, or is McCarthy very much in that conversation, in your opinion?
I don't think McCarthy's in the conversation with those guys specifically, and I don't want to throw shade on him, but I think Michigan was very heavily carried by their offensive line and their run game. I think when it was on J.J. McCarthy to run the game, he struggled a little bit, and I think if he's going to a place that doesn't have a coach at Jim Harbaugh level, and Jim Harbaugh's up at that top level, I think it's going to be a lot harder of a transition. He's a guy that I think needs to be drafted in the second, third round. Maybe he goes to Atlanta in the second round and he learns behind Kirk for a year and then starts to develop more and more. I think that's what I'd like more for him than to go right in the first round. I don't know that I trust his ability to carry a team as a first-round quarterback.
I would be open to drafting a McCarthy at like the second round for like the Giants scenario.
Yep, I would agree.
But that's not a guy that I want to draft at 6. And I know that there's some things that people really do like about McCarthy. Like I feel like when you break down the stats, out of all the quarterbacks in this draft class, on 3rd and 7 or longer, he statistically has proven that he's stretched the ball past that 3rd and 7, whereas a Bo Nix is throwing a check down and converting that 3rd and 7. So I feel like those are stats to really keep in mind. J.J. McCarthy also lit it up in the middle of the field, but that's also not with like a prominent like wide receiver, in my opinion, coming from like the Michigan scenario. I know that there's a guy that is going to be mentioned in the earlier rounds from there, and we are going to talk about the wide receiver position soon, but I do just feel like a lot of the other quarterbacks, even in May's, defense, that he had kind of more star plays this season than McCarthy did.
And you made a good point with the 3rd and 7, but I still think I prefer Bo Nix to J.J. McCarthy.
Do you?
I do.
Wow.
I like the running ability a little bit more, too.
Wow.
I like his ability to run the football. I like his... And not J.J. McCarthy can lead a team. I like Bo Nix's ability to really lead a team.
I disagree, Twan, though. I think Bo Nix is just a little bit more conservative of a player than J.J. McCarthy is, and I feel like that's just like I think he could come in and be in a scenario to potentially take over a team. I don't think he's a day one starter by any means. I think it's a good debate, though.
It is. I like the way Bo Nix plays the game. I really, really do, and I know what you're saying. He's able to go to the check down. He had a little bit more weapons on Oregon on the throwing side of the game.
I think the way they call the game is just drastically different, too. Like, I think that his skill set complements more to the college game, and I think that's why he stayed in college for so long. Yeah, like I think it's one thing to be successful at that level. He was a very good collegiate quarterback, but I feel like look at Mariota. Like they were they're not the same skill set, but they come from a very similar type of style offense. It didn't translate for Mariota. He won a couple of games, but his most memorable play is a playoff touchdown pass he caught himself.
I know. Oh, I wonder who he did that against.
But I'm not out here to bash Bo Nix. I do think he's a guy that's going to be selected closer to like that 3rd spot. I think 3rd round. I think Penix is very similar going to drop. I just think they're a little bit more of the bigger names. I think McCarthy is a tier below the May, Daniels, and Williams conversation, and I don't think he's one. I think he's top tier too, though.
I do think the national championship is swelling his name a little bit, though.
Yeah.
And again, we're not going to find out till they get to the NFL, but these are the right kinds of conversations to have. Is like, who is the better second-round pick to get? Because I really do think McCarthy goes in the second. Nix goes in the second. Penix goes in the second.
Wow.
You look at guys like that, and one of the things that I would like to see, I think Bo Nix would be a really good fit in somewhere like Seattle where they have a couple of studs. You can give the check down to Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, and they can help take you places. You have DK that can get open. You have Lockett that can get open. A young receiver in JSN that's flourishing. If Bo Nix goes to a place that has a solidified star skill player core, he could be very, very dangerous.
I think it's very cliche. I could see Penix being a better fit in Seattle than a Bo Nix would. I think J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix are both names that the Denver Broncos can be bringing up in conversations. Realistically, like if Bo Nix fell to a 3, I think that would be a great spot for the New England Patriots too. Even if they drafted a quarterback first round, say they got Jaden Daniels. Look at the whole Kirk Cousins scenario. I literally seen a meme earlier this morning, and it was like, his two guys. One was selected with the first overall pick or the first three picks in the NFL draft, and the other guy's a $400 million quarterback. One's talking on ESPN for 3 years, and one's done this in their career. And it's just like, that really did work out well for Washington. They should have just kept Cousins for his entire career, realistically. They'd be less of a disaster. But I feel like those are all really good things to talk about with that quarterback position. And the reason why I just feel like this is such a good comparison for J.J. McCarthy, and since I heard it, I haven't been able to unsee it. Alex Smith. I feel like that's honestly what he could be, and if he was to develop to that, I feel like that would be perfect for J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah. He can. I just – it's hard because he played in such an offense that was so run-heavy, and again, when he had to make a play, he was making plays. But it wasn't like the offense was fully relied on him. They had such a good offensive line. They had such a good run game. They had such a good defense that, like, you kind of plugged McCarthy in and he did his job, and they won a national championship. I think he's going to be solid. I kind of like what I'm seeing from Bo Nix now, but who knows? Like, before the draft goes, I might flip on it because I've still got pro days guys too. Already. We got the pro days to go. I'm curious to see how it all shakes out. That's why this draft is so interesting, because this is one of those drafts that we talked about depth last year. I'd be remiss to say that the offense this year has way more depth than last year.
Especially at the wide receiver position. Yep. And that's where my next question really goes is, are you buying the Xavier Worthy hype? Like
I am.
You are?
I am.
You really think he's a first-round pick?
I think he can be I don't think he's a top 15. I think he's in the back half of the first round. I really liked, first of all, his speed is going to kill. Secondly, I really liked his ability to be a star in that Texas offense when Adonai Mitchell went down.
Yeah.
And
they're both great receivers.
Those are two guys that I think should go in the first round.
I think Mitchell should realistically go before Worthy, if you want me to be honest.
I agree. He should. I think Mitchell could be a top 15 guy, top 20 guy.
Yeah.
I think if you look at a team like, I'm trying to think if
the Lions
would be a great fit for them there. I mean, if you look and I don't know what the deal with Ayuk is going to go, but if San Fran decides they want to take Xavier Worthy, he could be very dangerous there.
Yeah.
That's Arizona could get him in the top of 2. Like, these are locations that I think he'd be a really, really good fit in.
What just makes it really hard for me is we've seen that top speed skill set not translate to success in the NFL.
Ross, right?
Yeah, Henry Ruggs, like a lot of these guys. And that's not to put them in a category, because I do feel like Xavier Worthy is a much more polished route runner than any of those guys have been. And I feel like when you just hear the 4.22, it's just like that's the only thing that you think about. I feel like that was an offense that was explosive. You know, Ewers is a very good quarterback who is likely going to be, a top selection in next year's draft or whenever he decides to come out. But hopefully it's fast so we can see Arch Manning before he's able to actually declare for the draft, right?
I know.
But I do think he's a guy that's going to go within the top 50 picks. I think this is a guy that also would be very team-specific on the fit. Want to get your thoughts on this? Obviously, like, Garrett Wilson's an every down receiver. Do you think Xavier Worthy's skill set would complement him really well stretching the field?
It would in the second round. I don't think the Jets, if they're staying where they are in the first, can take Xavier Worthy.
No, definitely not. I agree.
I think he would complement them very, very well. Another team that I could see, I think he'd fit in Houston really well in that second round pick at 42. I think he could be really, really good there. You have Tank Dell, you have Mechie, you have Nico Collins.
I think that's a lot, though. Because you want those guys to have, like, a role. Like, you know what I mean? I do feel like Mechie could be that burner for them.
He could, but, like, I haven't seen it yet, and I kept saying it, and I get there was extenuating circumstances. But in the back half of last year, I really thought he was going to start to make that step up. I just didn't see it.
So, want your thoughts on this, and then we both have one more player to share before we wrap up here. I would hate this to be the case just because of what it could potentially bring. But with Michael Gallup being released, Dallas could be a good fit.
Dallas would be a very, very good. That's a good one I didn't even think of. I don't think about Dallas because they didn't do fuck all in free agency.
But that's exactly why I think the draft might be more important for them, because I feel like they've been paying guys, right? Like Tank Lawrence got paid. Like Micah Parsons, they know that they're going to have to pay him. Trayvon Diggs, Dak Prescott's got an expiring contract coming up, CD Lamb. So it's like, with all of that being in mind, you really do need to understand how to best utilize your money. And maybe it's not getting a top financial draft pick and getting a guy like Worthy with the potential in a place that could stretch the field like that. Because I know CD Lamb is a great deep ball receiver, but if you use him on more of like a similar skill set that could be like getting like the 7 catches, the yak yards, and all of that. You got Ferguson to break it up in the middle, and Worthy and Cooks can really stretch the field. I think that would be scary, and I, as a Giants fan, wouldn't want that. And I know the Giants have receiver problems as well, but I don't think like Worthy's a guy that the Giants should be trying to go in the direction for.
What if Miami loaded up on speed again here?
Oof.
That would be very, very intimidating, especially with the injury history that those two receivers have had now. With Tyreek has been hurt pretty much all of last year. Jalen Waddle's been hurt for a significant portion of his career. That could be scary. He could also burn on Buffalo.
Yeah.
That would scare me a lot.
Absolutely.
He could be a burner on Buffalo. Steve, I want to take the next one really quick. We're going to the running back position. I think a team that would be a great fit is the New York Giants for Will Shipley.
Okay.
I want to talk about Shipley. Shipley is kind of that McCaffrey type guy where like you can put him in the slot.
Shifty.
He's shifty.
Can catch the ball. He's a good runner. He can be a 3-down back. He really was the star in Clemson. He really, really was the star for Clemson. I think with no Barkley, I think Shipley could come in and make an immediate impact for the Giants. I mean, I think we're going to go in the committee direction. Like I would absolutely think that the Giants are going to continue to draft, especially missing out on A.J. Dillon, who we had a lot of interest in, re-signs with the Green Bay Packers. But, yeah, you need to be able to establish the run game. And I do think that Singletary's a move that doesn't allow us to break the bank at the running back position, but still get a guy that last year I would say was Singletary's best season in the NFL.
100%, absolutely.
So I think that's trending in the right direction. I honestly feel like we could draft running back a little bit later than like 2, honestly, just because we have so many dire needs. And,
I don't know that Shipley will go 2, though.
No, you think later?
I think you'll see maybe Corum go that early.
Okay.
I don't think you'll see another running back taken for a little bit.
Okay. Then
you
that's
take him at 3, you take him at 4, because the Giants have a couple in 3?
Yeah, we definitely do. So that could be a likely destination. And I like the fit and I like the skill set too. Like I feel like it kind of reminds me of like that David Wilson era that we try to have. But he was legit. His first play in a Giants uniform, he returned a freaking kickoff, did a flip on the field. Everyone was excited, and we saw 4 games for the rest of his career. Crazy.
Another fit for Will Shipley though. Cleveland.
Wow.
If you pair him with Nick Chubb, like they
complement each other.
They complement each other very, very well.
Yeah.
It lets Nick Chubb not take so much of a load where he's coming off a brutal injury. I would like to see him just kind of ease back into that role, and you can put Shipley in there to play the Kareem Hunt role.
Yeah. I know, and Kareem Hunt's a name still in free agency, hoping the Giants are able to, kind of dabble in that, see what it might cost. Maybe a 1-year, $4 or $5 million contract. Would be nice to have a veteran presence and bring in a rookie running back still. Last guy on the list, Juan, we can't talk about top draft prospects without bringing up a PSU guy, right? We're bringing up here Chop Robinson. Now, this is a little bit more of a raw prospect, right? I feel like he kind of reminds me of Nolan Smith a little bit, but I feel like Nolan Smith was a little bit more proven at the collegiate level, but Chop Robinson has the build and the mold to be one of those quick, fast, explosive type of pass rushers. He doesn't strike me as the most strong guy by any means, but definitely a mold that people in the NFL are looking for. And, I mean, if we want to bring up PSU defenders, we can't have this conversation without talking about a Micah Parsons.
That's a dit. Now, I would love to see him have a Micah Parsons-esque career. I don't know that he's on the Micah. I don't know that there's many people that are ever going to get to the Micah
Yes,
Parsons
I
level.
agree with you.
But he is an absolute stud with the right fit. He can be a complete problem. I look at him in Buffalo.
Okay.
He could be in Buffalo, taking over that Von Miller role eventually, working with Epinesa and Greg Rousseau. But again, they're loaded there. You can look at Miami. They need that good pass rusher there.
I have a couple of fits that I really hope that they don't go, but I just feel like that they're going to be looking for a pass rusher that could be the late 1, early 2. I mean, I feel like Chop will go like around that type of. Do you think he's going to go later than that?
I don't know. I'd like to see. It all depends on how many edge rushers start to get taken, or how many defensive players start to get taken. Because I really think that we're going to see a receiver run in that first round. I think, like you said, 6, 7 receivers. If you see that run, you could start to see these guys start to slip. Minnesota is an option.
I think Chop could be a good fit for the Eagles or Washington.
Yeah, Washington I think would be a good fit. With the Eagles, I'm remiss to say because I think they have
a plethora.
They have a ton of guys over there and some younger guys too. You get Jordan Davis isn't necessarily a pass rusher.
Yeah,
Jalen Carter can.
Sean Reddick, you know what I mean. So there is so many of them.
You just signed Brandon Graham again.
Yeah.
Another team I'd like to see with Aaron Donald retiring, L.A. The Rams.
I know that's a big void to really fill. I still actually can't even believe Aaron Donald walked away from the game. But all respect to him. Chicago Bears, that would be an interesting name to go there as well.
Very interesting. Pair him up with Montez Sweat, and you can get him in one of those second-round picks. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Twum, out of this entire conversation, what is the prospect that you might feel the best about, and what is the prospect that you might feel least confident about?
I feel the best about Cooper DeJean.
Okay.
I feel like he is going to be that guy. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. Again, I don't really think it matters what team he's going to go to, if I'm going to be real. I think he's going to be able to fly all over the field. I think he's going to have an immediate impact for the defense, and we might see him as that Witherspoon type. I'd say Gonzalez if he played more than a year, but we saw the flashes of what Gonzalez had. The guy that I don't feel the most comfortable about. I'm scared a little bit about Kool-Aid.
Are you?
I think he's good. The injury scares me.
I think he has good ball skills.
He has good ball skills, but I think
he's not a press corner by any
means. And that's where I think if you're going to try and line him up, like people are going to draft him, and I feel he's going to get drafted to be this one-on-one guy.
Okay.
I feel like against the top receivers, you're going to see him get
cooked,
a little exposed.
I think his skill set best compares to a Bland or a Trayvon Diggs. You know, they're not that guy, but I feel like that we've seen both of those guys come in proper scenarios and actually thrive.
Right. Again, this is like I still think he can be good. I just where he's getting talked about, where he's getting taken, I think he's going to be a little bit more refined. I think he's someone you're going to have to refine a little bit more where, like, I really like Terry and Arnold, and maybe it's just because I'm comparing him to Terry and Arnold that I feel a little bit less about him. We'll see. I still think Kool-Aid could have a great career. I think he could have a good rookie season. I don't know that he's going to have the Witherspoon. I don't know that he's going to have the Sauce kind of season that teams might be expecting out of him.
I feel that. Since the Sandbox fans, this is going to wrap things up for our top draft prospects as we approach the NFL draft season. Get into the end of March. You know, the first week of April, we're going to give you our first official mock draft with our second coming the week of the NFL draft. So make sure you guys are doing your homework. Stay caught up with all things going on in NFL free agency. It's been fucking wild, but it's an exciting time in the NFL. Positional ranking series continues. UFC will continue to be slung. There's so much going on at Since the Sandbox. You guys know the deal. Peace, love, 5 stars, nothing less. You didn't hit the mic that time.
I grazed it.